The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Hey, so good to be with you. I've been away from the camera for the last several weeks. So I've been dealing with having not only a sinus infection, but a cold and bronchitis all at the same time. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. Today is actually the first day where I felt like I had enough energy to sit behind the camera and actually make a video, get something accomplished, because I do like to keep things moving forward. I've got some questions here that I want to answer in this video, so let's get started. The first one comes from Quick SR20, who wrote me asking, he says, my 2011 iMac with an SSD, still kicking, running really fast, but where do I go next for an upgrade? The new iMac is harder to open up, way more expensive, and Quick SR20 is actually looking at what he calls a killer Windows 10 box next. So, he goes, I'd love a Hackintosh, but not sure it would be reliable enough as a main computer. Decisions. Apple isn't making this any easier. Well, I've made videos about my personal opinion about Hackintoshing. However, there's a number of people who have done so and have done so successfully, quite happy with their Hackintoshes. That's really, I think, a question you need to sort out in your mind. The big question I have for you, though, really, what would you be giving up moving from the Apple operating system and software to going to Windows 10? Would you really be losing much? Do you have a big investment in Apple specific applications, or would there be applications you'd have to repurchase in order to run them on Windows 10? That's really the big question. There's no doubt that you're going to get a lot more hardware for your investment on building your own PC or even buying a pre-made PC over the price of an Apple product. But you know, there's pluses and minuses to everything. So the real question is, what do you give up? What will you lose by moving from one world, so to speak, to the other? And I think that's the most important question. If you want to stay in the Apple ecosystem, then that's a real tough call. Where do you go if you feel the iMac in its current iteration is overpriced? That I don't have an answer for. I personally have never been a big fan of the iMac. I'd much rather have a MacBook Pro over an iMac, even though the iMac is a much more powerful desktop computer than, say, the MacBook Pro. The MacBook Pro is pretty doggone powerful, but I like the idea of having that portability along with the power of the MacBook Pro. I think the Mac Pro is probably not going to be an option. I do look for one more revision before it's discontinued, but I just don't know. That's a great question, but I think it's more about what you would be losing by going to that Windows 10 ecosystem. And certainly an Hackintosh is a valid way to go if you want to still run OS 10 and those applications. As I said, a number of people have done that successfully. It does require a bit of tinkering and a little bit of research and making sure the hardware works just so, but hey, it may be worth it to you. Okay, the next question comes from Christoph Blazewicz. Christoph has always been a great friend of the my videos, and how you doing, Christoph? Christoph writes, thanks for the great video, great job, we always enjoy them. While watching the Q&A, I wanted to ask a off-subject question. In previous older videos, you had a dual monitor setup. I know you've done a review on your current wide curve monitor, and I'm thinking of going to an LG 34-inch curved monitor instead of two 27-inch monitors. Would you recommend a dual setup or a big curved monitor? Thank you for your input. Hey, Christoph, not a problem. First off, no, my monitor's not curved. It was the UM95W, whatever the model is. It's not curved. It's the curved monitors don't really, they kind of play tricks with my eyes a little bit, especially when I'm doing things like editing video or working in applications. I think curved monitors more are for watching movies or playing video games that makes it maybe a bit more immersive, but they're not really my cup of tea, but doesn't mean it wouldn't work out for you. In my particular case, there were many good reasons for me to actually move away from dual 27s to 134. The ergonomics are better for me as far as my neck, because I had my two monitors, one straight in front of me and one kind of curved or cocked off to the side. And so I was constantly doing this thing with my neck going back and forth, looking at various applications. It took up a lot more room on my desk, having dual 27s and the 134 inches another. I just feel I'm a lot more productive that way. However, there's other people that don't like the widescreen ratio, aspect ratio, that is too wide for them, and they prefer something more of a standard aspect ratio. Boy, it would be great if you could borrow one for a little while before you bought it, or make sure that you get from a place with a great refund policy and try it for yourself and see how well things improve for you or they don't work out for you at all. And excuse me, I am having a little bit of difficulty breathing. I'm running behind on a breathing treatment right now, getting over this bronchitis. So if you hear me gasping for air, yeah. But hopefully that answers your question. For me, the 34-inch wins over dual 27s. Okay, the next question comes from Commodore 256. Question, do you think there are more benefits to Macs having uniform hardware besides stability? Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you verbatim, but it boils down this. Commodore mentions that a lot of people say they like Macs because of the uniform hardware and integration. Says he thinks there might be a benefit, performance optimization by doing things that way, because I'm not a console gamer, but he's kind of using a console analogy because he understands that you can get into very low-level bits when you're writing code for a console versus a PC. And he wonders if it works that same way on Mac, particularly in the world of video editing. That's where things get interesting. He said, I saw a video where they compared a Mac laptop of Final Cut against a higher spec desktop that was overclocked with Premiere, and the Mac rendered faster. Do you think that the render settings in the SSD were more a factor at play? I'd like to see a more scientific, more apples-to-apples comparison between the two. And Premiere is garbage right now. So I'm going to throw this out there, and I think this is something that doesn't really get mentioned when you see these comparisons. When you're, okay, in all fairness, when you see a reviewer doing that, comparing Final Cut Pro 10 against Premiere in a rendering scenario, what they're failing to say is that Adobe typically is going to be relying on CUDA acceleration for encoding. In other words, when you're, say, taking that video and you're exporting it, you're rendering it, you're encoding it in, say, MP4 format for YouTube. What they don't either say or they're not sure about or don't know about is that, and I believe this to be true, that Apple uses and makes calls to the Intel QuickSync feature of its CPUs for video encoding and decoding. And again, because Apple does build the whole system, right? They have the Mac, they have the Final Cut. I think they're making calls directly to that Intel QuickSync feature, which done properly is going to give you a really much faster way to render video than, say, using CUDA or even OpenCL. And I don't think that gets addressed in these videos. But if you look it up and you Google the Intel QuickSync feature of its processors, CPUs, you'll see that it can make a tremendous difference in rendering and encoding video. And I think that's what gives, more than anything else, Final Cut Pro 10 is competitive advantage. And certainly of interest to me why Adobe doesn't make that option readily available in Premiere. It's an interesting thing to ponder, but hopefully that answers part of your question. Apple's control over the hardware and software has been debated till the cows come home. Yes, there's certainly some real advantages there, but I think it's just a very crafty way they went about it. I don't think ultimately it's a real fair comparison to say Apple is so much better because of the total control over the ecosystem than it is that Apple kind of figured out to take advantage of certain parts of the hardware in a better way, in a particular purpose, such as encoding video. Hopefully that makes sense. And that's going to do it for this Q&A session. Always look forward to your comments down below. Bruce Naylor, take care.